Guys, you have seen this video. You have seen we react to his story. I think this is a better version of his story called Zack the Film. We already mentioned it to add the history video. Alright,
Take
go watch
4
that.
right triangles and make sure they're
No, let's watch his popularist videos. Oh yeah, I watched. How many views does this has? Why are we subscribed? I don't know. I think you subscribed 200 million. 253 million views. I think I have come across this literally like years ago.
Stitches. A doctor threads a needle through your wound and pulls it tight to close the skin.
It hurts a lot. He had stitches before.
As the
I had 18
stitches together,
stitches.
the wound becomes inflamed as new cells
It was
begin
like that
to
for real.
repair the
For real,
tissue.
it was like that.
Afterwards, connective tissues and collagen
It was something yellow coming out. I thought it was
then
vomit.
blood vessels form to nourish these developing
Because
tissues,
bro was 2.
filling
I
in
saw that.
the area. And over a few weeks, the wound will have healed together and the stitches are removed. When you get stitched, if you get a splinter, most people just go ahead and pull them out. But sometimes they get lodged so deep into your skin that you can't reach them. If the area gets infected, it will start to swell as pus forms under the skin. This creates pressure around the splinter that can sometimes push it upwards towards the skin's surface. And if you're lucky, after a certain period of time, your body could have completely removed it from your skin. Have you ever noticed how odd the McFlurry spoon is? Well, some people think it's supposed to work like a straw, but you only have to try that once to realize it does not work. The true reason for these weird spoons is actually pretty genius. You see, McDonald's didn't want to clean their beaters after every McFlurry, so instead, they designed a spoon that would also work as the mixer. Have you ever noticed how odd If you shot a bullet at ancient armor, some people think it could actually stop the impact. But armor like chainmail was designed to block slashing swords. And plate armor was even better at deflecting strikes by spreading the blunt force across more area, lessening its impact. But these materials weren't very good at stopping arrows, which had enough energy to enter the armor. So a bullet would have no trouble going right through.
If I was in ancient time, and if I was in a war or something, if somebody shoot a bow at me, I'll just, when it hits when it hits my body, I'm gonna just take it out. How are you even gonna survive that?
If you somehow removed all of the blood vessels in your body and tied them together, you might think it would be about this long. But the human body has thousands of these tiny vessels that move in and out of every body part. And with all of them combined, if you started in New York, your blood vessels would make it all the way to the Grand Canyon. It would go on to reach all the way across the Pacific Ocean, over Japan, Asia, and all of Europe. And not only would it make it all the way back to your starting point, but it would be able to make this trip this is not true. 4 times over.
This is not true.
When a doctor gives you a shot,
I have shots before in my leg.
Accidentally push the needle all the way through your vein, which ends up puncturing both sides. Once the needle is removed, it leaves 2 holes in the vein. And before the body can thicken the blood and seal these holes, it bleeds into the surrounding tissues. This leaked blood forms a dark, tender area under the skin, creating bruises and splotchy areas. When a doctor, if everyone on Earth clipped their toenails, and when a doctor gives you a shot, creating bruises. If everyone on Earth clipped their toenails and threw them into the ocean, you might think they would float and blanket a huge area. But toenails don't actually float, so they would pile up at the bottom of the ocean. As over 82 billion clippings rain down, it would choke fish and smother the seafloor until a massive pile broke through the surface. And after this global
I'm
clipping,
pretty sure that's
8 billion,
10 times bigger
than Central Park. When a firing squad shoots a prisoner, one of the bullets actually isn't real. You see, one of the rifles is loaded with a blank, but it still fires and kicks back when the trigger is pulled. The soldiers aren't told which rifle it is, casting doubt on who actually shot and killed the man. This way, the soldiers can feel less guilty and sleep at night, knowing there was a chance that they weren't the one to kill him.
Imagine if that guy was it.
Have you ever wondered how this trick is done?
Nope.
It's one of those things where you know he
Never
can't
saw it,
actually
never cared
be
about it.
If you lose one of your adult teeth, the bone where the tooth once was can start to deteriorate. To prevent further damage,
he had 2 teeth in one area.
a dentist will fill the cavity with a synthetic material that mimics real bone. Once filled, a metal bracket is secured on top and the incision is closed. After the graft has healed, a large implant post is inserted into the new bone. Then a small metal piece is screwed in and a porcelain tooth is secured on top. If you
that means can I chew with it and
They opened the pallet of ammunition only to find it was full of Tootsie Rolls. You see, Tootsie Roll was a code name for mortar rounds, which the Marines desperately needed. But the radio operator who received the order didn't know that and sent the actual candy instead. At first, the Marines were angry, but the sub-freezing temperatures had frozen all their food, and the candies ended up sustaining them over the next few days. They even used them to plug bullet holes by warming them up and letting them freeze in place. And eventually, the real mortar rounds did arrive. They opened... If you accidentally touched a table saw, you'd probably think your fingers would be cut off. But this isn't always the case. You see, some modern high-end saws actually know the difference between wood and your skin. Once your finger comes in contact with these special saws, it immediately detects the electrical conductivity from your skin. This triggers an immediate mechanical response that stops the blade in less than 5 milliseconds. When a honeybee stings a human, they actually get stuck for a while and can't leave. And this is because their stinger is barbed, which means it can't retract once it's lodged into something. But once the bee finally pulls away, its insides get ripped out because the stinger stays in the skin. This leaves the bee without some of its internal organs, resulting in its death. When a honeybee... Have you ever wondered about this little dangly thing at the back of your throat? Well, even though it looks like a miniature punching bag, it actually serves a handful of important functions. You see, when you swallow food, this thing called a uvula actually swings backwards to prevent the food from going up your nose. It's also constantly producing saliva to keep the throat moist, which aids in swallowing. And because there's a tiny muscle inside the uvula, it can move around, which helps you speak.
For
Have you
real,
ever
it's
wondered about this
moving right now.
thing at the back of your throat? Well, even though it looks like a miniature punching bag, a red-hot iron is pushed into the tree, wounding it on purpose. Then a syringe filled with salt water is emptied inside the hole. This causes the tree to flood the damaged area with sticky resin to stop the damage. And over the next few years, the resin slowly spreads, turning into a sweet-smelling wood deep inside the trunk. Finally, it's harvested and sold for thousands of dollars per pound before being made into a... If you stuck a long sword out of a car aiming for a tree, the sword would obviously snap and rip from your hands. But what if the sword is unbreakable? You have an indestructible grip and your body is physically immovable. Well, the force would then transfer to the car. It would screech to a halt as the sword hits. But what if the car can't stop and is forced to keep moving? Now the tree should split in half. But if the tree is indestructible too, with no way to break, bend, or stop,
if you hit it, it's gonna cause an immediate
escape. Would this unleash a massive shockwave as powerful as a nuclear explosion? Or worse, something reality itself isn't equipped to contain? If you're stuck in a water slide that's filling up with water, most people think they should try.
I'm going water slide. I can't swim.
Coffin and if you're trapped in the trunk of a vehicle, you should immediately start searching for the glow-in-the-dark release hatch. If you don't see the latch, don't panic. Trunks are not airtight, so there's no risk of running out of oxygen. Try feeling around the edges of the trunk for a handle. This may allow you to release the seat back. As a last resort, kick out one of the brake lights. This small opening will allow you to signal for help. When you use a derma roller, it pushes a bunch of tiny needles into your face, creating small punctures across the surface. A tiny nail is placed inside the drilled hole. Then it's glued shut and repainted. This makes one side of the die heavier, causing the opposite side to land face up more often, allowing you to cheat. If you get a skin tag, some people think you can just rip them off yourself, but you actually shouldn't do this. You see, skin tags are connected to your body by a thin piece of tissue, and if you look inside of it, the tag actually has its own nerves and blood vessels. Ripping it off would cause significant bleeding, and the open wound would be susceptible to infection. Instead, if you want them removed, a doctor can freeze them off with liquid nitrogen, which is a better option.
Why is he naked?
Have you ever wondered why the letter E isn't used? The soldier's foot would break through a hidden bamboo slat and into a hole if they stepped onto a cartridge trap. Inside, a bullet was positioned on top of a nail that was fastened to a wooden board. And when the soldier's foot hit this shell, it pushed the nail into the primer. This caused the shell to... When a tiny frog hops into a giant tarantula's burrow, it seems like it's walking right into a trap. But the spider checks the frog with its legs, and if the frog has the right chemical signals, it's safe. The frog helps by munching on ants that could attack the spider's eggs. In return, the tarantula becomes the frog's bodyguard, scaring off bigger predators. It makes the frog seem like a pet, but they're really just tolerant roommates. If you plucked out a single strand of your hair, it could hold about 40. If you touch a cactus, you'll probably get the spines stuck in your skin. And if you try to pull them out, you can actually break them off in your flesh because they're so fragile. So instead, you should apply a layer of glue over the area. Once it is dry.
Do I look like I have glue? Do I even look like I go outside?
Quickly peel it off in a smooth motion. This will pull out the spines evenly, causing them to stay intact. If you touch a cactus, you'll probably get the spine. His teeth were infected and fell out, so by the time he became president, he only had one tooth left.
Oh, that's
it was removed to fit his dentures, but they weren't made of wood like you might think. Instead, they were crafted from the teeth of animals and even other humans. But they barely fit and were painful to wear. This made it hard to speak, and he even avoided smiling, which is why he looked so grumpy in all of his portraits. His teeth were infected.
George
A few days ago, I showed you how this trick was done, and I was wrong. This is how I originally explained it. Cane, base, rod. If you chip a piece off of your tooth, a dentist might shave down
metal chipped off a
surrounding area. Then a bonding material that matches your tooth color is applied and shaped to match the original appearance. Once the shape is near perfect, a special light hardens the material, making it as durable as the tooth. Finally, the dentist polishes the tooth to blend it seamlessly with the others. They soak $1 bills in bleach until the ink dissolves. And this is because real bills are made from special paper that's hard to recreate. Once all the ink is gone, a real banknote is left behind. And a printer then prints a fake $100 design. Now, if someone checks the note at a store, it will pass as a standard test. But if they look a little closer, they'll see it's missing the right UV marks, putting an end to the counterfeit operation. They soak $1 inserting
no way
Q-tips
he
in
say,
your ear actually just pushes most of the earwax further in. This is so bad for you that even the Q-tip box says not to do it. But odds are you'll still use them even after watching this video. Why? Well, using Q-tips leads to what dermatologists refer to as the itch-scratch cycle. Do you notice something weird about how Putin walks? He swings his left arm freely, but his right arm seems like it's stuck to his side. Some people have speculated that because this is a sign of early Parkinson's, Putin might be at risk. But the real reason he walks this way has nothing to do with his health. Putin was a KGB officer for 16 years, and in the KGB manual, it spells out the specific way officers should walk, so they can always be prepared to handle their weapons. This style of walking perfectly describes the way Putin walks today. Other long-term KGB officers also seem to walk the same way.
Why does he sound like that?
If you stepped on a World War II landmine, three prongs hidden just beneath the surface would immediately sense the pressure. This pressure would release a striker pin, activating a fuse. Then, an initial explosion propels the mine upwards, reaching about waist height. In the air, the fuse reaches the main charge inside, causing the mine to explode. The casing shatters, ejecting metal fragments at high speeds in all directions. If you stepped on a World War II land, the cow knocked him into a pile of manure, snapping his hip. He couldn't move and had no way to call for help. For 5 days, he lay helpless in the dirt, baking in the sun and freezing at night. But he wasn't alone. His goat found him and stayed by his side. At night, she curled up beside him to keep him warm. Days passed, and without food and water, the man grew weak. But the goat let him milk her into an old bottle, getting just enough to survive. Eventually, he was found and rushed to the hospital, but he swears he wouldn't have made it without her. The cow knocked... You know the equal sign in math? Well, back in the day, people actually wrote is equal to instead. And mathematician Robert Record was getting tired of writing it over and over. So in 1557, he started using two horizontal lines instead. He figured since the two lines were the same size, they were equal to each other, which made it the perfect symbol for equality. You know the equal sign in math? Well, back in the day, people actually wrote is equal to instead. And mathematician Robert Record was getting tired of writing it over and over. So in 1557, he started using two horizontal lines instead. He figured since the two lines were the same size, they were equal to each other, which made it the perfect symbol for equality. You know the equal sign in math? Well, back in the day, people actually wrote is equal to instead. And mathematician Robert
really made
Record
an
was
equal
getting
before
tired.
GTA
If an octopus loses some of its limbs and then somehow makes it back into the ocean, you might think it would die from the open wounds. But they have an ability that allows them to quickly seal the cut before it becomes infected. Once the wounds begin to heal, new cells can start to reconstruct the missing limbs. And after several weeks, new, fully functional tentacles regrow. If you swallowed a watermelon seed, some people think that it could potentially sprout in your stomach, meaning that you'd literally be growing a watermelon inside of you. Now, this is obviously not true. Your stomach acid would dissolve the seed before it had time to grow. But there was a case of a man who swallowed a pea that ended up going down the wrong way. And months later, after being rushed to the hospital because of breathing problems, a doctor discovered that the pea had been ingested in the man's lung. And because lungs are warm and moist, the pea was able to split open and sprout into a plant. If you place the flies in the fridge until they stop moving. Then slice a matchstick in half and glue a paper-thin wing across the top. Add tiny drops of glue to the wing, one for each fly. Then stick the dormant flies on by their bellies, all pointing in the same direction. breathe warm air across their bodies, and as they wake up, their wings buzz back to life, and the whole plane lifts off the ground. Place the fly. The army ant is placed on the wound and positioned so its jaws clamp tightly on the edges, securing them together. Then the ant's body is twisted off, leaving its head and mandibles in place, which acts as a stitch. More are added depending on the size of the wound, and these ant stitches are left in the skin until the edges of the wound stay closed on their own.
Does it hurt?
When you pump gas in your car, there's
like
this
it
tiny hole connected to if you took out one of your bones and somehow molded it into a chunk about this big, you might think it would be completely crushed under the weight of a car. But human bones are actually made of a tough mix of minerals and a stretchy protein called collagen. And this makes them so strong that a single cubic inch can support the weight of nearly 5 standard cars. If you puncture a lung, air will move in and out of the wound as you breathe. When this happens, it can fill the space in your chest, putting pressure on your heart. To stop it, find an airtight material like plastic and use it to cover the wound. Next, tape it down on 3 sides. This stops air from getting sucked in, but allows it to escape. And lay down on your wounded side to keep your chest under pressure as you wait for help.
What? Why is it bro actually kind of dead?
He slips one arm into the left wing, while the right wing is attached by a fishing line, and his other arm stretches straight up into the head. His fingers move the beak as it talks, and his pinky pulls on a hidden string that controls the eyes. To read lines, a script is taped to the inside of the suit and lit by a tiny LED, and a monitor strapped to his waist shows a live feed, letting him watch his performance in real time. He slips. Imagine you woke up dangling on a trapeze high in the sky. You start freaking out. You're so high you can't even see the ground. Now, you have no idea how you got here, but a part of you thinks this might be a dream, just because of how odd the situation is. I mean, you can't even see where the chains end. This has to be a dream. This means you should just let go and you'll wake yourself up. But it does feel real. So maybe you shouldn't fall, just in case. Hours turn into days, and you're getting exhausted. You're afraid you're going to fall asleep and let go on accident. But maybe that's a good thing? There really isn't any other option, and time is running out. What do? Imagine you woke up. When you swallow food, it's supposed to go down your esophagus, which leads to your stomach. But there's this different route that leads to your lungs called the trachea. And the trachea sits. The king when you swallow food, it's supposed to go down your esophagus, which leads to your stomach. But there's this different route that leads to your lungs called the trachea. And the trachea sits right next to your esophagus. Now, when you swallow, the fleshy parts in your throat move over the trachea, so the food won't go down it. But sometimes, if you eat too fast, the fleshy parts of your throat don't do their job, and the food goes down your trachea, also known as the wrong pipe. When you swallow, the king gave each boy a seed and told them to grow the best plant they could. You see, the king was old and was trying to find an heir to the throne. One boy named Ping loved gardening. He watered his seed, gave it sun, and used the best soil. Keeping close watch, he waited for a sprout, but nothing ever grew. When it was time to show the king, the other boys had huge, colorful plants, but Ping only had his pot with no plant. He decided to bring it anyway. The king looked at every plant without saying a word, until he reached Ping. Then he smiled and announced him as the winner. You see, the king had previously boiled all of the seeds so they couldn't grow, meaning he knew that every other boy had cheated and replaced their seed with a different one. But Ping was honest, and the king knew that honesty was more important than results.
Alright guys, if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to click on the screen. I hope you guys enjoy, and go watch that history video.